Kapla from Super 7 for giving us Klingon security. Here's your look at the brand new Super 7 Star Trek The Next Generation Ultimates, Lieutenant Worf. Worf, son of Mog, is the first Klingon to serve in Starfleet. He is Chief of Security and Chief Tactical Officer aboard the USS Enterprise D. He has achieved an illustrious and honorable career and has played a key role in Klingon Empire politics. His sense of humor, duty, and loyalty have made him one of the most respected members in Starfleet. While today may not be a good day to die, it is a good day to look at some new Star Trek offerings from the folks over at Super 7. Lieutenant Commander Worf, if I'm reading the tape measure correctly, stands at 7¼ inches in height, or the figure's about 18½ centimeters tall. Let's compare Worf with everybody that outranks him. First at the top of the totem, here's what he looks like with Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I did actually hear in that review from other viewers that said they picked up Picard and had no paint problems whatsoever. I must have been the lucky one. Someone a little bit more taller in stature, but still outranks him. Here's what the figure looks like with Commander Riker. Remember that clip from Family Guy where Picard reaches over to Riker and says, "Would you join in on a laugh where I said that Lieutenant Worf's head looked like a fanny?" Good times. I don't even know why I never brought this guy in when we looked at Picard, but here's as well what the figure looks like with another character that outranks him. Sorry, I'm just rubbing it into Worf. Here's what he also looks like with Lieutenant Commander Data. As we move away from figure comparisons, now to figure accessories, Worf does come include some pretty decent accessories. It just, though, for a second dawned on me, we're now 2 waves into the Star Trek Next Generation Ultimate figures, and we've already got 4 members of the USS Enterprise. Not side-tier characters, not somebody that just happens to be in the background, but we actually have 4 main characters that appear in pretty much all the episodes of the series. And yet, when we got Simpsons couldn't even have put out a family member with each of the waves. That's probably one of the reasons why they lost the licensing and why it's been awarded to Jakks Pacific instead. This is what they're doing right. Simpsons was what they were doing wrong. Now, it's not perfect, of course. Worf, I think, makes more for the positive end of Star Trek Ultimate figures. Actually, all of the figures have been good. I've just been a little disappointed with the paint for Picard. The only stumbling block, I would say, as I'm waving my finger down below at the bottom of the screen, the only thing that stumbles here on Worf is the included of this one accessory. Now, I looked online because I didn't know exactly what this was. I mean, yes, it's a glass, but based on, at least on the listings for online of Worf, it apparently is a glass of prune juice. A glass of prune juice. Now, look at this. Now, is this anything you would consider displaying with Worf at any given point? If at some point down the road we get ourselves a 10 forward setup where Guinan could stand behind it. Yeah, a tabletop, you could put some glasses out. But for Worf, this just seems like a waste of plastic. I would have maybe spent the plastic, spent a little more of that, and given him maybe a tricorder similar to Data. This just is never going to be something I'm going to display with the figure. By the way, though, he does have at least that dedicated hand. I think it's not maybe probably the same hand, but a similar style of hand to Picard. Picard's, of course, would be a little bit more dainty. He'd be holding it by the actual handle. Worf just seems to hold it like he's going to be downing the shot. Makes no sense. Prune juice, why? Let's move that off to the side. I'm going to move the hands back in place. We're going to go back to that in a second. Figure also as well comes include the bat'leth. Bat'leth nicely detailed. I can't tell really what has actually been molded and what's been painted. I would guess that the handle parts have actually been painted, but then looking at the sheen of the silver, I would think that this is also painted. So I'm pretty much sure from tip to tip, point to point, everything's been painted on the bat'leth. This can also be wielded in his hand. He has a couple of gripping hands for maybe not that one. And this is also for the phaser, but you can also use this as well for holding the bat'leth too. Speaking of phasers, figure also comes include not only the Type 2 phaser that got packed along with Picard, Riker. I think Data was the only one that didn't come include with an actual Type 2 phaser. He comes with that, but he also comes include with a phase rifle, if I can actually pick it up. The phase rifle starts somewhat the same, although unfortunately it's missing a lot of the paint down below here. I feel like this is still a section that should be painted in. They just decided to leave it off completely. But it's very similar in the design of the Type 2 phaser. It's just a lot longer of a unit. On the back, there's a little bit of, I think this is the little dial that adjusts the settings of the phaser. I think there's also a little scope that pops up. Doesn't have that on this, but at least it's a nice little type. It's a nice type phaser rifle. What's interesting also about this rifle is the fact that it does also come included with a laser effect. If you look at it, there's a peg right there. Can you see it? If I get my blasted finger out of the way, it's right there. And on the end of it, you just fit this into the end nozzle of the rifle, and it just plugs in place. And now he's got himself a phase effect. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Can the phase effect be also used for the Type 2 phasers? It doesn't look to be the case. First of all, if you look at the end of it, there's no hole. And trying to even line this up, no, it doesn't look like it actually... I mean, you would think that they would put a hole on the end of that as well. I suppose you probably could take yourself a tiny little pin and dowel out a hole. I wouldn't want to really ruin that. But you think that they would have actually made the phasers work the same way as the phased rifles, where you could have actually take the phase effect. Not that any other figure up to this point has come included with a phase effect. You could actually have put that on the end of it. I feel also like the phase effect. Why do I keep calling it a phase effect? I feel like the laser coming out of this, I feel like shouldn't be yellow. I'd have to go back and look at the episode. I keep thinking it should be blue or orange. Maybe it should be orange instead of yellow. Anyways, though, it is something at least can attach onto the end of it. Okay, so he also comes included with a couple of swappable hands. He has relaxed hands right now. He also has himself a closed fist. Some of these, by the way, have made reappearances from the earlier figures we've already had a look at. He comes with a gripping hand for holding the handles of, more specifically, the phase rifle. He comes also included, of course, with a hand for holding the prune juice glass. Why? I don't know. Comes with another gripping hand, and he also comes with a hand specifically for holding the phaser. If you take the Type 2 phaser and line it in place, I think it's also the same hand that we got with pretty much every figure that has a phaser has had this hand, although this time around it's molded in brown instead. If it lines up perfectly, so you can get right on the actual button. That's a more horrible impression of a phaser. But also, if you, again, wanted to have him holding the phase rifle, the only thing, unfortunately, about the phase rifle is taking the figure, first of all, removing the hands. That's the first step, of course. You're going to have to take those off. And then we're going to go ahead and grab the hands. So we're going to grab this hand. Obviously, thumbs go in, whether you're a Klingon or not. That's on one side. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. So we're going to plug these both in. By the way, it's always good to really twist these. Just don't force them in. The only thing about it, though, is with Worf only possessing a single hinge in his elbows, it means that if you want to take the phase rifle, for example, fit the grip in his one hand, you can't quite bend it. You can't, like, bring his arm around, for example. So you have to kind of wing it, and you have to have it facing more. And it just looks awkward. I mean, this could have benefited so much better by having a double hinge here in the elbow. But without having that, Worf, unfortunately, sort of just awkwardly holds the phase rifle. Well, you can get it about there. Removing that and putting it off to the side. The only other thing that the figure comes included with, if you don't count the sash, which, by the way, the sash can be removable. I was really expecting this would be permanently attached to his uniform. It'd be a lot, obviously, easier if you didn't have the head in place, but this is just a softer plastic. You would just slide it up the forearm, just, take it off completely if you wanted to. I just don't know. I guess they just wanted to make it as a looser piece, but just for something that Worf would always have, you would think that they would just permanently glue it in place. Anyways, I'm not going to be complaining of the fact that they didn't take the time to glue the sash, especially for something that you could be removing like this. I'm sure they're probably going to be using this body again for probably a slightly thicker, bigger figure, maybe like a Miles O'Brien would probably use a very similar large body like this. The only other thing that Worf also comes included with is obviously his alternate head sculpt. Just before, though, we look at the alternate, I want to show you guys the default that starts with the figure when you get this guy first out of the packaging. Of the head sculpts, it's funny that, like, 3 of the heads have been a little bit more realistic. When it came to Riker almost had a little more of a cartoon look to him. I mean, if you, say, compare him with Riker, I just happen to be always displaying this guy with the smiling face. Riker comes across a little bit more like a cartoon. Worf looks a little bit more realistic like he would be in the series. He's also, I think, him and Picard, I think, have the best head sculpts. But again, like, Picard just suffers from the fact that his paint is done so wrong. I mean, look, between the neck, the back of the head not even having it, and, of course, the very obvious bit of gray that he has above his lip. Of the 2 heads, though, these are the best, I think, from what we've gotten from the Super 7 Star Trek stuff so far. The other alternate head that he comes included with is more like sneering Klingon face. I mean, obviously he has Klingon faces in both the cases, but this one is just a little bit more of a sneering, angrier Klingon. This is not the side of Worf you really ever want to see. Both the heads, again, really are good. I mean, both with the crest that he has on the top of his head. The sculpting of the hair on the back seems very similar. I mean, it probably is the case that they're using the exact same sculpted hair. And again, just to change out the heads, just going to pop that off the ball joint. And again, just to show you guys, you can take the sash off completely if you wanted to. I mean, like, what am I going to really do with this? Worf always really has it, so I'm going to put it back on the figure's body. And then let's just go ahead and put the head back in place. Now, I did have to heat the head to get this back onto the ball joint. I found the head was extremely difficult. If you look at the actual peg or the socket inside, I don't know why it is, but the plastic, maybe it was just a harder plastic that they used for Worf, but the head, I heated this, but like I'm going to have to maybe heat this again before we get the final looks. Anyways, though, the head sculpt is going to look like that. And then that would work really well with the backleth if you want to display the figure along with it. Why am I struggling so much? I'm probably going to have to heat that again before we jump to final looks. Let's just jump back to the defaulted head, because I know at least that one snaps in place. There we go. Looking at the rest of Worf's body, of course, he's got the little pins there. He's got the little notations of rank on the side, being only really just a lieutenant. He's also has a communicator there off to the side. That's now sculpted, of course, onto a body. They just didn't paint it or stamp it in place. And, of course, being that this guy also has the yellow uniform, it's very similar to, of course, the one that we got from Data, but using a different body. Worf's is a lot wider of a body. He's also a lot taller of a figure as well. The only thing I would say about Worf, though, is I did notice getting this guy out of the packaging. I didn't want to wipe it away, all of it, because in case somebody else happens to have this figure and notice the same. At where his waist attaches here, and I don't know what this is, there's this, what seems almost like oil, just at the bottom of his torso. I've rubbed away some of it. I didn't want to rub away all of it because I did want to show you guys some of this. They probably may have lubed the joint. Lubed the joint? They may have lubed the joint just to probably add a little bit more freedom to it. Maybe it was just in the assembly line. They had to put a little bit in there just to, take the front half of Worf, the back half of Worf, the bottom half of Worf, put them together that way. But yeah, there's like a film. You can see it. Can you see it? It's right there. I don't know why it's there. It's probably, again, I'm thinking it's just a little bit of oil. If you have pickup, it's funny enough, like of the next generation Ultimate figures, it's the only one that has this. And I don't know why. But like the rest of the figure's body looks pretty good. Like I don't have any real problems with the paint, where Picard may have missed the mark on paint. Worf actually does pretty good. I mean, like the likeness not only is landing there of the actor, but of course, like all in all, like his suit looks pretty clean. The sides, I mean, that would be one area that could be a bit of a paint problem, but doesn't seem to be the case. And of course, he does have the shinier shoes down below. The only other thing, like if they're going to miss it on paint, they're going to drop the ball when it comes to articulation. Worf's pretty good, although he is loose on his arm, so there's that. I mean, you can see like just how loose his arm is just by moving it back and forth. This arm isn't as bad, and his legs, luckily, aren't loose. But Worf out of the packaging should not be this right away. I've had the figure out of the packaging probably for like an hour or so, and it just shouldn't be as loose as it is. And there's always, again, one problem with these figures. For his articulation, by the way, Worf does have the ball joint, so of course his head rotates all the way around. It looks up that high, it looks down, and you can also move it back and forth as well. Upper torso, despite having that little oil residual there, does actually move pretty good. I mean, it goes up, down, back and forth, and you could rotate it really all the way around if you wanted to. Arms rotate easily all the way around. There's a hinge that allows the arm to hinge out at 90 degrees. You can as well swivel the bicep. Sadly, still, just a single hinge in the elbow, so that's as much as you're really going to be able to do. Especially for wielding a phase rifle, you'd think that they could have actually put double hinges in the elbows. But, again, like, if you're looking at any of the Super 7 stuff, whether it be Thundercats, Silverhawks, G.I. Joe, even G.I. Joe was guilty for this as well, they all seem to be sticking with the idea that all their Ultimate figures always have to have just a single hinge. That means it's only a single hinge here. It's a single hinge down below in the knees. Hands rotate all the way around. The legs split out on Worf. You can take them and move them forward. You can move them back. There's a slight swivel at the top of the thigh. Again, only possessing a single hinge in the lower leg. At least the lower leg does rotate. And you've got your ankle pivot back and forth, and ankle rocker back and forth. And like with all the other next generation figures, they all have pegals in the undersides of their feet. So if you wanted to, you could use yourself a display stand. See, with just a little bit of movement that I've actually done, I've now surfaced some more of that oil. I'm going to have to wipe it away. If you have picked up this figure by yourself, for yourself, let me know down below in the comment section. If you've also got some residual remains of oil there. Again, I don't know why it's there, because like every other next generation figure we've looked at, whether it be Picard, whether it be Riker, or whether it be Lieutenant Commander Data, all of them have not had any bit of that oil, and yet Worf picks it up. Worf ends up just having it around his torso. Not sure why. Figure looks good. Of the head sculpts, I would say like Worf and Picard are the top of what we've gotten so far. Data wasn't bad. Riker, of course, comes across a little bit more like a cartoon. Nice looking figures, though. But again, like as a reminder, just to sit back and just think about this for a second. Simpsons I know, here we go, talking about Simpsons, but like Simpsons, for how many waves we've got, how many family members dressed in casual clothes did we actually get? None. And yet, second wave into the Star Trek Ultimate figures, whether you feel the line is still suffering from some of the problems that plague, Super 7 releases, again, like Picard was a little on the rougher side when it came to his paint. The fact that we have already four members of the crew of the Enterprise is pretty good. 2 waves in already. Worf is a nice addition to the existing figures that we already have right now, and it's good as well. I mean, not that it really matters when it comes to displaying these guys on your shelf, but the fact we have 2 red tunics, now we have 2 yellow tunics, nice way to alternate some of the colors. Now, of course, there are, as far as I know, they're still continuing this licensing moving forward. I don't think have we heard anything yet that they're going to be canceling the Star Trek Next Generation Ultimate figures? I hope they haven't, because I think there's going to be a Guinan, and there was, who else was going to be part of that 3rd wave? I'm still holding out hope that they're not going to cancel lines similar to what they did with The Simpsons, because unlike The Simpsons, that really did disappoint a lot of collectors, I've actually been generally quite pleased with what we've gotten so far from the Star Trek license. I don't know too many Klingon proverbs, but I'm sure there's one that a Klingon warrior wielding a bathlet automatically has to be sneering. The benefit of Worf is not only does he have a bathlet as an accessory, but he also has, yes, a secondary head portrait. So if you want to have more of the Starfleet stern look on his face, you can do that, or you can also have the figure displayed like he's ready to kill you. That, I think, has happened a couple of times in the episodes where somebody was giving him orders he didn't like, and he probably uttered something along the lines of, if you weren't a Starfleet officer, I'd kill you where you stood. Now, if I got a response like that from Lieutenant Worf, I'd be taking a few steps back and reevaluating my choices. With Worf, actually, he's got quite a lot of choices to work with. Not only coming included with the backlet, but he also comes included with the phase rifle, the Type 2 phaser, and even, hey, a phase effect that can go on to the end of the phase rifle. Disappointing that it doesn't actually go on to the Type 2 phaser, and it's also disappointing, I mean, I didn't mention it, but he also comes included with the prune juice. Again, I looked online, and I really wanted to make sure, too. I looked online and just assumed it was a glass. But from the listings, at least I've seen, it actually does say a glass of prune juice. Why would that be an included accessory? Why would that have even been part of the discussion at Super 7 when they were all sitting down and coming up with the accessories that could go with each of the characters? Okay, there was the poker chips, there was the playing cards, those went with Riker and Data. That was already nonsense. But who then put up their hand and said, hey, you know what? What if for Lieutenant Worf we gave him a glass of prune juice? It may have been referenced in an episode, but I don't think it's as important of an accessory that it should have been packed with the figure in the first place. I mean, if he's a security officer, if he's a science officer, you'd think he'd come included with like a tricorder, but I guess they just assumed, well, we've already given him 2 phasers. Data doesn't have a phaser, so we gave him a tricorder. I guess they just wanted to spread out some of the Starfleet accessories among all of them. Of the head sculpts, actually, Worf and Picard are the best, I find, at least, of the 2 waves of Star Trek Next Generation Ultimates figure that we've gotten so far. Let's hope the line does continue. If it's anything like, I'm not even going to say it. Not going to say it. But if it's anything like the other lines, there have been a couple of lines that Super 7 have lost. Let's hope that this license is something that they're still going to hold on to. Because, like I said, I've been pretty happy with the Super 7 Star Trek Next Generation Ultimates so far. Have you guys had the chance to pick up Worf? Let me know down below in the comments section how you have the figure displayed. Watch somebody in the comments actually say, oh, hey, I've got the figure displayed with the glass of prune juice. Nobody's actually just doing that. If you're putting that in the comments down below, it's only just because you're trying to razz us. That's all you're just trying to do. By the way, though, if you guys wanted to get your hands on Worf, maybe not with a bathlet in his hands, he is actually available right now at Entertainment Earth. That's at least where I got Worf. That's where I got Picard. If you guys are interested and would like to get your hands on this Klingon, you can click the link down below in the video description. That link not only will take you directly to the lieutenant, but also that same link will save you 10% on anything that's on the site. Not into Star Trek, you're into Star Wars as well. Well, we could have a debate for that on another day. But if you wanted to get something else with that link, like I said, anything that's currently in stock, 10% right off the bat. Also, hey, if you guys did enjoy this video, want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content and want to stick around for more, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure, hey, as well, you're turning on the bell notification. We are also going to be looking at some more Super 7 Ultimate figures. We're kind of going to jump back and forth between a couple of different licenses, so there's always going to be, of course, new stuff to look at. But in the meantime, if you maybe are new and have missed out on all the other things I've looked at from Super 7, you're in luck. Popping up at the very end of this video, transporting its way in, will be a playlist. Feel free to give that a gander. That's covering not only the licensing of Star Trek, but all the other things that Super 7 have covered. You know, Ren and Stimpy, Silverhawks, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, Transformers, you name it. Pretty much most of it has been reviewed here on this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.